starting with the journal. This is an 8x8-inch vegan leather notebook from Archer and Olive. So let's open this up and take a look inside. So this is the interior spread of my reading journal. Normally this is a bright white paper with this nameplate. It also has the Archer and Olive logo, but I decided I wanted to fill this page with collaged elements. This is a black and white photo of a rose that I tore out from an old art book. A lot of these pieces are torn out and collaged together, things that I took from an old book. Same thing with these black and white photos, also from an old nature-related book. These were also cutouts. This was from a business card from a bookstore in Boston. And then I also wanted to layer on my own handwriting. So I used a fountain pen. These are lyrics from the Dear Reader song by Taylor Swift. I used a Muji brush pen to write out my name and the upcoming year. I'm also adding bits of washi tape here. This is a sticker I got from a bookstore traveling somewhere. I actually had 2 of these. I didn't realize I bought them at different bookstores, so I do have one more. But I love this one because it doesn't have a super bright color palette, so I knew it would blend right in with the black and white images and cream colored pages. This is another sticker I bought on a trip. I love buying stickers when traveling. I'll usually come home with like 10 new stickers from a trip. And this one I bought from Scotland last month from a witchy cult-like store. I actually got a bunch of other cat stickers too, all within the same design aesthetic. So I really love how this cover page turned out. The only thing I'm a little disappointed about is how the fountain pen ink smudged and spread. For some reason it took a long time to dry on this paper in particular. It dried just fine here, but here it didn't, so you can see some smearing and transferring over to the next page. But overall, I love how it turned out. Let's take a look at the next page. This one I usually just leave blank because there's this awkward glued situation here. I might fill it in later with something, but I'm just leaving it blank for now. So this is meant to be the yearly stats spread. So on the right here, I have a chart where I would fill in each of these at the end of every month. So the total number of books I read, number of pages, how many audiobooks I listened to, if any, how many of those books that I read that I already owned, and how many I read from the library, and also how many new and used books I acquired for that month. So I would add these numbers every month, and then at the end of the year I would have a total, which will be kind of fun to look back on. Over here I plan to add some kind of bar graphs or pie charts based on the numbers that I get here. So obviously I need to wait till the end of the year so I can see what all my stats are and then how I want to create them in charts and graphs. So for the title section, again, using tear-outs from books here, and in order to make the headline stand out more, I used a white thick Posca marker to just go over the page and basically mute it a little bit so that when I put the title on top, it will stand out more versus the words in the book. So you'll notice I do that a lot just to tone down the black type in the background. These are little bits of washi tape. I wanted to try to use the same themed tapes, at least for these first few pages, and then using the same Muji brush pen to create the headline here. And then down here I just used a fine liner and a purple highlighter to create the chart. This is one of my favorite spreads that I was most looking forward to creating, the reader tracking spread. I am by no means committing myself to completing 105 books for this year, but I wanted to have a large enough number that would cover all the books I could possibly read in this year. And this is a pretty good estimate because at the time of filming this video in mid-December, I'm at about 102 or 103 books. I might finish 1 or 2 more before the end of the year. So I think it's pretty safe to say I probably won't go over this, but who knows. I created a key here, so I haven't decided if I'll use different colors or patterns. But the idea is that I would fill in one of these boxes for each book I complete, and then it will be cool to look at this at the end of the year, see which months I read the most in and the ones that I read the least in. You'll notice a lot of the same design elements here, so torn pages from a book to create these layers, other things that I collect from pamphlets, magazines, other books, things that I just collect over time so that I can use them in these types of art projects, and the same types of washi tape. And then I started to incorporate some black and white line art drawings. You'll notice that I alternate between two different styles for headlines. So this type of cursive handwriting versus the same cursive but with a brush pen, just to provide a little bit of variety from one spread to the other. This is another favorite spread of mine. So on the left here we have a daily reading tracker. I was a little apprehensive at first whether I wanted to include this because I realized it will take a lot of diligence on my part to complete. But basically I would fill in one of these boxes for each day that I read. Whether it be 1, 10, or 100 pages, I create a mark for each day that I read for this year. I might use the same color key that I create here, or leave it all the same, or alternate every other column between a different color. I'm not sure yet. But again, this will be really cool to look back and reflect on to see how often am I reading on a daily basis and which months I'm reading a lot in. On the right is a genre tracker, starting with ones that I read the most and then a few that I wanted to push myself to read more in. Starting with fiction, which is a majority of what I read. I used to read a lot more romance, but I'm trying to diversify more. Some nonfiction. This past year, in 2023, I started to read a lot of graphic novels. I just found so many beautifully illustrated books, and I want to keep that up in 2024, so that's a big bucket of books that I'll probably read. Then there's horror, mystery, and thriller. So I have a huge backlog of Stephen King books that I own. I think I own pretty much all of his books, maybe missing about 5 of them, so I want to work my way through those. I read quite a bit of memoir books. I love reading about people's stories and how they overcome things. Fantasy and sci-fi is one genre that I don't read at all. But I'm including it here because I want to push myself to read at least one or maybe a few within this category, just to see if it actually is something I might enjoy reading. Historical fiction, I don't read too many, although I do own a few books in this category, so I want to read a few more there. I'll read the occasional young adult book, and 2 genres that I really don't read a lot of, but again, want to challenge myself to read at least 1 or 2 in this year are history and biography and short story essays. So a lot of the same elements here, same torn pages, washi tape, and the simple black and white drawings, all within the book writing, reading, theme aesthetic. This was another really fun spread to create, the book bingo spread, and I've seen people do it a lot of different ways, but I separated it into 2. So on the left are things that I kind of want to challenge myself to do as far as the books that I read, or just fun things to check off. For example, a book that maybe I learned something new in, a book I complete and read in one day, a translated book. Maybe I'll reread a favorite book. A new release will probably be pretty easy. One with multiple point of views, a short story collection, banned book, a book that makes me cry, a book that was overhyped and maybe I didn't care about. This one's kind of fun. A book that makes me question a belief, or a book that I'm reading solely based on the cover. And then over here are tropes in books. So some of these are maybe that the main characters are from different worlds, a big theme of betrayal, dual timeline, something cursed, unreliable narrator. Some of these are more in romance novels like enemies to lovers, fake dating, a love triangle, incapable of love, forbidden love, time travel, meandering plot. So these will be fun to fill in throughout the year. I'm not sure. I'll probably just use a colored marker to fill in the square once it's complete. Same elements of torn pages from a book, other bits of collage, washi tape, the black line art book drawings, stickers. This is an old vintage stamp used for the free space. Over here on the left, we have a reading goals page. So I left a little space to add more goals that I might think up throughout the rest of the year, but some of the ones that I already put in are first to read 50 books and then a push goal of 100 books, finish listening to all of the audiobooks I already own, all of the book of the month books that I already own. I'm really interested in reading the entire Harry Potter book series. I read the first few books as a kid, but I never finished the series, and it might be interesting to reread something like that as an adult. So I want to try to get through as many of those throughout the year. I might reread a favorite 5-star book, try reading at least one fantasy book, as I mentioned with the genre tracker. I want to read at least 3 Stephen King books that I already owned, and at least one of those being over 500 pages, which isn't that hard because a lot of his books are just 500 to 1,000 pages plus. In general, I just want to read more of the books that I own. So half the books that I read, if I read 100 books, that 50 of those would be ones that I already own. Another goal is to read a history book on a subject I want to learn more about, and then also to try annotating at least one book. This is something I want to try out. I won't do it to every single book I read, but maybe ones that are favorites that I reread, or just a book that I feel as I'm reading it inspires me and I just love so many of the quotes or different parts of the plot, and I want to write notes about them. So it's always been hard for me to swallow the idea of writing in my books. I do want to try it out. It'll probably be really cool to have this book that I highlight, underline, create notes in the margins, and be able to look back on that years from now to see how I was reading it through the lens of my life at that time. So I think it would be a good gift to myself. Over here on the right, we have a series tracker. I don't normally read a lot of book series, but the ones that I have here so far are the Harry Potter series. The Divergent series I already own, and this kind of falls in that sci-fi fantasy category that I could push myself in. The You book series, based on the Netflix show series, I own a used copy of the second book, but none of the others, so I'll probably get them from the library. The Bill Hodges trilogy by Stephen King, I already own all 3 of these, which would also help me tick off this goal here. And also the Heartstopper graphic novel series by Alice Oseman. This past year, I already read the first 4. I got them from the library. They're a fun, nice, light read. The 5th one just came out this past month, so I do want to read that one. And then I heard that a 6th and final book in the series is coming out sometime in 2024. I have a few other series in mind, but I wanted to wait and add them as I go in case I change my mind or something else comes up. I like how the illustrations came out on this one. I have a few larger ones that I included, again with the same layering elements. Cute little stamp of a kitten and another vintage stamp over here. This is a TBR Books I Want to Read in 2024. Most of this that I already filled in, a lot of these are books I already own that I want to intentionally try to read this coming year, although there's a couple of them that are coming out this year that I would probably either buy or get from the library at some point. But yes, I went ahead and filled in all of the Harry Potter books, some Stephen King books I wanted to read, some romance, fiction, nonfiction, a couple of classics here, and I'll fill in more as I go, but obviously the idea is to check it off once I've read it. Same theme of elements here. You can see the white Posca marker layered over the words just so that the headline stands out more. Stickers and washi tape. This is the anticipated new release spread. So these are books that are coming out in 2024 that I'm excited to read. Doesn't necessarily mean I'll purchase them. I might, or I might get them from the library or just wait and see. But so far, 2 books that I know of that I want to read coming out in this year are Funny Story by Emily Henry on April 23rd. She's a favorite author of mine, so I'll pretty much read anything she comes out with. Girl Abroad by Elle Kennedy. I've never read this author, but I just found it off of a YouTube video. Someone was recommending it. It sounded interesting, so I added it here. I have a few other books in mind. I just haven't added them to the list yet. This is the books bought spread. So the idea here is that every time I buy either another new or used book, I would add it to this list. The title, the author, the date of purchase, and whether it's a new or used book. I'm hoping I don't surpass all of the lines in this spread, but who knows. I tend to buy a lot of books when traveling, so it might be hard depending on how much I travel this year. This spread, Library Reads, every time I read a book that I borrowed from the library, this is where I would put that. So again, the same idea, title, author, and the date that I finished reading it. So it'll be interesting to see how many books I read that I got from the library. I added a lot of black line art drawings to this spread. And the last spread for this setup is for the first month of the year, January. So the idea is that every month I would have a new page like this where it's a simple cover page, a little bit of decorative elements here. And then I thought about adding books that I'm excited to read this month, so maybe books that I'm thinking I will read. And then on the opposite side here, I would write out all of the books that I actually read for that month. So it'll be interesting to see how many of the books did I want to read at the beginning of the month that I ended up actually reading. I tend to be a mood reader though, so once I finish a book, I just pick up whatever I'm most interested in versus like forcing myself to read a book just because it's on some arbitrary list. So we'll see. These roses are from a washi tape that I own. Same elements of collage. This was from an old book that I tore out, as well as these layering pieces on top. And then after that, as I'm reading these books, the intention is that I would create some kind of book review. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to do 1 page per book or 1 spread for a book if I really loved it, or I divide a page in half or in quadrants. Not yet sure. It'll just kind of depend on how much I enjoyed that book and how much I have to say, including things like favorite quotes or summary of what I thought about it. But I would fill in the subsequent pages from books that I read in January. And then in February, I would create another intro spread like this all throughout the year. My hope is that I finish this entire journal in 2024. Hopefully I get all the way to the last page or as close to it as possible, but who knows, I might run out of pages depending on how much I really complete on those book review sections. And so that's it. That's my setup for my first ever reading journal. This is the first time I've ever created a customized journal for reading. I'm really excited to fill it in as the year unfolds. And when it's complete at the end of the year, I'll do a flip through. I hope you enjoyed this. If you're creating your own reading journal, leave a comment below and let me know what kind of spreads you include. Would love to hear more about it.